Welcome everyone to the Career Bites. And I do apologize sincerely for the delay in starting. We only discovered that there was a technical hitch with the link. And I'd like to say a big thank you for coming. I know that attending sessions straight after work on a Monday is not the easiest of things, but we felt it's always better than a Friday when you are very, very tired. So thank you very much. And I look forward to an interactive time after all the presentations. I would like to start by saying that in BAME Planners Network, one of our aims is to raise the visibility of planners within the BAME community. And that is reflected in our speakers. One of our other objectives is to also help planners within the BAME to progress within the planning career. And that is also an aim we're achieving through this particular program that we've put together. We haven't got a formal feedback form, so we will really, really appreciate if at the end of the event, you let us have your thoughts either through the chat room or you can email us at info@bameplanners.com. That feedback does help. In 2021, we will have a more formal feedback forms, but for now, we're just trying to keep it informal so people can just really give us their heartfelt feedback in terms of the way that any course or training that we put together impacts upon them. I would like to start by giving a very warm welcome to our three. Okay, I was going to ask if you don't mind on sharing, please, Pan. Pan, can you please unshare? I don't know if, yes, please, because I'm just conscious that, okay. So what I was going to say next is I'd like to give a very warm welcome to our three speakers. And as I introduce you, please just give a wave so the audience know whom you are. I would like to start by welcoming to our panel of speakers, our two steering group members. They've been on board with the BAME Planners Network right from inception. And the first person I'd like to introduce is Mrs. Judith Onuh. She's a chartered town planner and she works as a principal planner at WSP. Hi, Judith, if you don't mind giving a wave. Hi, Judith. Okay, thank you. She's a principal planner at WSP, and she has over 6 years experience working in both the public and private sector. So I will give, I will speak a little bit more about her when I invite her to do her speech. I just wanted to just give a quick intro. The other person I'd like to introduce is Lap Pan Chong. He is also a member, a licensed member of the RTPI, and is working as a senior planning officer at London Borough of Enfield. Hi, Pan.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, and our guest speaker, well, hopefully he will join the network because the network is not just about planners, it's also those who are interested, in the things that we do. Yeah. So hopefully you'll become a BAME Planners Network member soon, but I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. Is Joshua Palmer, and he's an experienced recruitment consultant within the property sector, specializing in placement of town planners, etc. And I will introduce him much later. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Pan has drawn the short straw, and so he's starting first. So Pan, over to you when you are ready.
Yeah, cool. Let me just share my screen. Give me a second.
So while Pan is sharing his screen, I'll just finish his intro. So Pan has worked in the private and public sectors since obtaining his postgraduate degree in 2017. He's now on the development. Sorry, I've lost my script. I have to get back because Pan shared his screen. Just hold on. I had my scripts on my screen and Pan's. Okay. So let me just take that again. So Pan has worked in the private and public sector since obtaining his postgraduate degree in 2017. He is now on the development management team, where he deals with minor developments and post-decision matters of major development scheme, while working towards its charter status as a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute. Prior to moving to the UK, Pan campaigned for community-led development for 3 years in Hong Kong. Welcome, Pan, and over to you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still struggling to find the, I'll just. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, cool. Great, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Helen. So basically, I am tasked with how to acquire work experience in this section. So, but I'm not going to share how successful or remarkable I have been, because I'm not, but it's more about my personal reflection on my own experience, and hopefully it can be, something of use to you guys, something I believe I've done right, or something that I could have done better or in a different way. So hopefully can open up the conversation, and then you guys can join in later on. So in terms of the presentation, it mainly talks about how I gained some work experience during the university study, and how I got some during on the job as well. So just a little bit background about myself. So I was raised in Hong Kong, and I graduated from the University of Sheffield with the master's degree in town planning in 2017. So I'm now a senior planning officer at London Borough of Enfield since July 2020. So it's relatively new. So I'm also, like Helen mentioned, I'm also a steering group member of the BIMS Planner Network. So unfortunately, there's something wrong with the link. So I apologize again. I still don't know what has gone wrong, but hopefully more people can join now. I'm also working towards my chartership status. So that is the, in order to help you to understand how I, navigated my journey in the planning industry, especially in the first 2 years. So I prepared my, sort of a employment history. So hopefully can have a more contextualized understanding of how I got where I am now. So like all of us, I started my university study in October, and then I got my first work experience, 1 week work experience in January, and then I got my second one. It's a part-time unpaid work experience from June to September. And then after the term ended, after I submitted my dissertation, I got my first part-time graduate planning job at Troy Planning and Design, which is a London-based medium-sized planning consultancies, which are specialized in strategic planning and community planning. So in February, I went back to Hong Kong because I need to apply for my visa. And then when I returned to the UK, I got my first full-time planning job. I worked as a community infrastructure levy officer. So from that, you know that I wasn't very successful, because it took me like 6 months after I've submitted my dissertation. So I got the first job in April, so it's quite late. So, but still, maybe I can just talk about something I think I've done right. So first, I think I took some very practical courses, including spatial planning system, and also a urban design project, which we needed to formulate an area action plan to regenerate an area. And we also had to design a development proposal for an individual plot. And we also had to conduct a financial viability appraisal as well. So these courses, they are very practical, and they helped equip me with the knowledge about the UK planning system. And actually, it really helped me to build up my portfolio for my interview. So when I got my first job at Troy Planning and Design, I literally printed out my portfolio to show what I've done and what I've learned. And I found it quite useful for me to show that, well, actually, I was serious about my job, and I really wanted to get a job. And also, secondly, I found having unpaid part-time work experience worked quite well to me. And I think it's sending out speculative letters to, potential employer still worked for me. If you look back, so I got my work experience, the part-time work experience at London Borough of Harrow by sending speculative letters to the head of the department. So in that letter, I set out how long I can commit to my work. So I told them that I would be willing to work 2 days per week for 3 to 6 months. And I found it perhaps it's more helpful for them, because then they can better manage me. They can assign me a supervisor. They can actually give me some meaningful task instead of just being an observer. So if you look at that, I mean, it is part-time, it's unpaid, but it turned out to be something greater, because I then 1 year later, I actually went back there as a planning officer, which is a full-time permanent position. And I wouldn't have got this position if my ex-colleague there hadn't told me about the job openings. And also they helped me with how to answer the question in the application form and how I can prepare for the interview. And actually, the guy that I work with during my work experience, he was in the interview panel as well. So I didn't do the interview quite well, I have to be honest, but perhaps because the trust that I have built with them during the work experience helped me to get a job. So I think that's something I have done right. But in hindsight, of course, I could have started to look for work experience earlier, because we have got winter break, Easter break, summer break, but I just literally skipped the Easter break. I didn't do anything in terms of the how to progress my career. So it's always better to start earlier. So especially if one thing that I would have done would be started to have the part-time work experience during my study, but apparently I didn't. And also I could have used, different method to look for work experience as well. For instance, to network with some alumni or like some mentor, etc. So like I said, my first planning job started in April. So for this job, I right from the beginning, I knew that being a community infrastructure levy officer wasn't the job that I wanted to do the most. But realistically, I needed money, and also I wanted to get one foot in the door. So for this job, my purpose was very clear, that I mainly focused on developing my transferable skills in the actual setting of the planning industry. And 4 months later, you can see that the experience helped me to secure another job, because I was able to draw on the experience that I acquired during these 4 months to demonstrate I could work against tight deadlines. I could also help improve the workload of the team. And these are the experience that even may not be directly relevant to my role, but they somehow showed my proactive attitude and also my ability for working to a deadline. And secondly, I think what is quite helpful is to ask for exposure, but at the right timing, then with the right person as well. So for my role at Harrow at the beginning, because my area manager, she is really a good planner. She is very detailed oriented, but that also means that I need to spend a lot of time in order to build that trust. So I started with some basic application for like certificates, prior approval, household, etc. But I found it really helpful because I set up, regular one-to-one meeting, kind of a review with my line manager. So it gives me the opportunity to receive some feedback and evaluate my own performance. So when I felt that we were both quite satisfied with where I was, then and how I handled my existing task, then I started to ask for more. For instance, some more interesting cases or some job shadowing where I could go alone with my line manager if she went to some meetings for some major development, and that helped me to understand a bit more about how the procedures and also different how they approach some major development and more complicated development. So and I was very lucky because my line manager was very helpful, always gave me some positive feedback and held me alone during this journey. And I think thirdly is really important, and I found it very, very crucial, is to show willingness to help, because when I look back, the time that I learned the most and get to experience the most probably is when some of my colleagues, they left, and because the applications have to be done on time, so there's no choice but have to work against tight deadline. And because they knew that I would be able to help and I would be able to deliver, so they were willing to give me some complicated cases, and that really helped me to gain a lot more exposure, and that still applied at my new role now. So that is something I found it very helpful. But having said that, the journey didn't go as well or as smooth as expected. So after a year, there was a job opening of a senior position at my old workplace, but I didn't get the internal promotion because I struggled to present myself during the interview. But I mean, honestly, I was a bit quite upset, and I questioned about my capability as well. But then 2 months later, another opportunity came up, and I took it, and I moved on. And I found it really helpful was that I kept a sort of a logbook, so I can keep track of all my experience during my year at Harold, and and that helped me to draw on some experience that I learned during that journey during the interview. So, for instance, I showed them how I managed to achieve the highest number of cases within deadline on the team. I printed out some statistic. I showed them my performance of my peers. I printed out some of my reports. So by doing all this, I guess that helped again to show how keen I am for the job, and I know what I've been doing. So I'm quite happy with where I am, and my current employer, they were very patient. Even we spent like literally 5 months to sort out the visa application during the COVID crisis, the pandemic, since our last interview was back in late January, and it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The whole package worked out a bit better. I got more exposure than I were at the previous workplace, And Enfield is a very proactive council. A few months now, I've gained more trust. So now I mainly deal with some minor development and some post-decision matters of some major developments. So I'm still looking forward to grow there. So I guess that is the end of my little reflection. I look forward to the conversation later on. So I guess I know that in terms of the timing now during the pandemic is always quite hard to get job and opportunity. So perhaps we can discuss it more later and see what we can do to help each other. So that's the end of my presentation. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Pan. That was really, really excellent. Something I should have mentioned in the intro was I met Pan when he was working in Arrow. I was there as an interim deputy DM manager. And so on occasions, I had to clear Pan's cases. And when he was going back to Hong Kong, I did keep in touch, and he sent me a very, very warm, appreciative email, which again counts for much, because it's always good to be appreciative of those who help you grow. So Pan did send a very, very good email to me appreciating all the inputs I had in his career. And so when I was about to start Bain Planners Network, obviously I remembered him and I invited him on board. And I'm quite happy to see that you were able to get the job in Enfield and you are doing very, very well. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And her name, as I mentioned earlier, is Mrs. Judith Onuh. She's a principal planner at WSP. When you're, while I'm speaking, you can set up your slides so that we don't waste much more time. We're already slightly behind. So she specializes in place. So she specializes. Sorry, I've lost my place. Let me start. I was reading Joshua's own. So Judith Onuh is a chartered town planner, and she's been working with WSP for over 6 years. And she started her first role with the Planning Inspectorate as a graduate planner. And since then, she has gone on to work in the housing sector and planning consultancy. Judith has a wide range of experience on schemes ranging from nationally significant infrastructure projects and residential developments. Judith has just been elected into the General Assembly, and she'll be taking her place from 2021 to 2023. So she will join the GA in January, and she's passionate about encouraging diversity within the built environment. Welcome to you. And now it's over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Good evening, everyone. This evening, I'm going to be talking about my planning career and what I've learned over the years. So this is a brief outline of what I'll be discussing this evening. Helen's already done a fantastic introduction for me, so thank you, Helen. But I will just mention that I did graduate from the University of West of England, UE, in 2013, where I studied social planning over 4 years. So this is just a brief overview of my career timeline. As I said, I graduated in 2013. I didn't secure my first graduate role until 2014. That was in the public sector. I then went into the private sector in 2015, working for a small planning consultancy. Following a year there, I moved to a house builder. And then in 2020, I am back into consultancy. So my first graduate role was at the Planning Inspectorate. It was a temporary role, and it was a fantastic opportunity for me to get my foot in the door and gain some practical planning experience. I was working in the National Infrastructure Division, which is responsible for examining nationally significant infrastructure projects, also known as NSIPs. So these type of projects, think of Heathrow Terminal 5, think of Hinkley Nuclear Power Station, think of strategic rail freight interchanges. Those are the scales of projects that I'm talking about. These projects are examined under the Planning Act 2008, We did a module in this in university, but it wasn't really covered that much. We did focus primarily on the Town and Country Planning Act, so it was completely new for me to learn this side of planning. I was very fortunate. I got to work alongside the inspectors in examining these NSIP projects. I got to learn from them, look at the type of issues that they're considering when making a judgment as to whether or not this NSIP should be granted consent. I was originally hired to work in a national infrastructure team, but I was able to gain experience in other departments within PINS, which was really, really beneficial for me because I was only there for a year, so I wanted to make the most of it. So for me, the main things that I learned during this time was understanding the Planning Act. What is it? What is it designed to do? And how this is applied to NSIP projects. So there's so many different aspects of the Act, but primarily, what does it take for a project of this scale to come forward? There's so much information and technical report that's required as part of the pre-application before it can even be submitted for consideration for examination. And then going through the examination process, inspectors need to make sure that everything is followed to the complete letter. Otherwise, they could leave the permission open to judicial review at a later stage. Part of this, I also found out that politics plays quite a big part in planning, given the scale of these projects, and ultimately, although the planning inspector has been independently appointed by the Secretary of State for Transport or Energy, depending on the type of project it is, ultimately, the Secretary of State for Transport, for example, would be the one to grant consent for an NSIP scheme that's transport related. So although the inspector makes the recommendation, the buck falls with the Secretary of State. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot of interest in these schemes from ministers, being lobbied, members of the public lobbying them, local authorities. So for me, that was an eye opener because I hadn't really appreciated how much the two are intertwined. I really enjoyed this role. I had a year, like I said, so I really wanted to make sure I experienced everything that I could. I had a flexible attitude, really eager to learn, and I was willing to assist in other departments, not just the one I was recruited for. An example of this is I found out who was in charge of the local plans team, found out who he was, where he sat. And one day I went over and I introduced myself and asked if I could spend some time in his team, learning what the local plan team does and, you know, broaden my knowledge. And as a result of that, I got to accompany an inspector solo to an examination of a seal charging schedule in London. We were away from the office for a week, just me and this inspector, and my job was to assist him in taking notes, dealing with members of the public, and making sure that the hearings went smoothly. It was a really, really fantastic opportunity because in the evenings, we'd be out together, just having dinner, talking over what we've learned that day, what was said. And it was just a unique opportunity for me to ask questions of this inspector that had so much years of knowledge, and he was just so open with me. And you know, I'm sure I asked some really stupid questions, but he was really gracious and answered all of them for me. So all of this came out of a temporary role, which was just absolutely fantastic in helping me gain practical experience in the planning sector. So I then moved into the private sector in a planning consultancy. Here I dealt more with clients, which was a different way of working. I started drafting local plan representations on behalf of clients. I developed my commercial awareness, which wasn't something I was really exposed to in my previous role. What makes a scheme viable? What can make it unviable? What can you do for your client? They bring you a scheme, they say this is what we want to do. Is adding an additional house going to make the scheme unviable for them? Just that whole concept of viability was completely new. So that was a really good learning curve for me. And in addition, understanding local plan policies is one thing to sit through an examination of a local plan, but how do you apply that local plan, those local plan policies, when you're considering a planning application and submitting a planning application on behalf of your client. So in this role, for me, the interaction with clients was quite new. You have to be really careful in how you present information to the client. A lot of them will come to you and say, I want a planning application, please submit this tomorrow. But you need to be able to manage their expectations, because there's a lot of background work that goes into pulling together a planning application. It's not something that can happen overnight. So, you know, being able to explain that to your client and outline what your planning strategy is, try and secure consent for them is really important. Again, understanding viability. If you know that, you know, providing affordable housing on site is going to be difficult, you need to be able to convey that to the local authority and your planning officer who will be examining your scheme. And again, that helped me to develop my negotiation skills, that whilst we might not be able to provide affordable housing on site, we can do X, Y, and Z through providing Section 106 contributions, so monetary contributions to the local authority for them to be able to provide affordable housing in another area of the borough, or, you know, provide a play area for children in the locality, you know, anything that will help offset the impact of your scheme. What I would do differently, I think I would have waited for more roles to come forward. As I was on a one-year contract, I was just wary about having a gap on my CV, but in hindsight, this role wasn't really the best fit for me. It didn't really provide me with the relevant exposure that I was looking for. However, throughout the time, I did develop other skills, and it helped highlight to me other characteristics that I possessed that I wasn't necessarily aware of, such as resilience and being able to work through challenging situations, which as a planner you always need anyway, because you'll always come across challenging projects, clients, and you need to be able to navigate them. So moving on from there, I went to work for a house builder. I really enjoyed this role. It was a varied role. I got to be involved in the process from the beginning, from site identification all the way through to build out, which was completely new to me. I particularly enjoyed conducting site visits, getting out there and looking at the site. Is completely different looking at something on paper and being out and about, looking around you, hearing the noise levels, looking at how many people are walking in the area, what's the characteristic of that site. It just helps you have a more nuanced understanding of the site. And so when you're writing your planning statement, it can be a lot more thorough. As part of this role, I was also responsible for managing my own project team. And obviously I had my own caseload that I was managing as well. And I quickly learned that it was really important to be able to identify quickly what the key issues for that particular site was. So for example, if I knew that flooding was going to be a particularly big issue, I knew which consultant I wanted on that scheme because they were just brilliant. Another aspect that I really enjoyed was strategic land. I was involved in the promotion of an 8,000 unit scheme across 2 local authority boundaries, and that was just taking it through the local plan process, promoting it to the 2 local authorities, showing that this site is good for residential development, and this is what we're proposing as part of a high-level master plan, and what we're hoping to deliver. Again, the site promotion was completely enjoyable for me. I really loved working with the project team. So many outstanding consultants on that project. I got to know again about the politics and the lobbying of the local authority, working with different stakeholders. I mean, for a scheme of 8,000 units, we need more than just housing. You know, we needed to speak to the NHS to see what we could provide on the site. We needed to speak to the council's educational team for schools. it was just a lot of different stakeholders, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the site visits as well. It's really nice to get out of the office every now and then and get some fresh air. And as part of this, I was asked to complete risk assessments, which is not something that I had done before, and I wouldn't have considered it otherwise. You know, why do I need to tell my manager where I'm going? I'm just going out. But they need to know where you are. They need to know that you're safe. They need you to check in with them to let them know that you got there safely and that you made it home safely. So for me, I think it was really important that I found the right job following my last one. So when I came to the interview, I was prepared with so many questions. Who will I be working with? Who's my manager? What's the makeup of the team? What kind of activities will I be doing? And I think that really helped me feel comfortable. Luckily for me, my manager was in the interview, and I just knew immediately that we would work alongside each other fine. So that was really, really comforting for me. Also, I was really serious about gaining my chartership, and I made that really clear. And I asked them, you know, what structures in place to support graduates through this process. And they really outlined it to me, and ultimately they were supportive and they did help me to gain my chartership. So last but not least, I'm now back in consultancy, working on NTIP projects again. So it's kind of back to where I started originally as a graduate, able to enhance my skill set working at WSP. Given the size of the organisation, I have an opportunity to work on a wide range of projects at various scales, and I'm able to get involved in a range of initiatives such as the RTPI General Assembly, being on the BAME Planners Network. They've really provided that opportunity for growth, and plenty of opportunities as well to develop leadership skills, because once you get to a certain point in your career, you need, if you want to progress, you need to be able to develop leadership skills and show that you can lead as a team, or, you know, lead on big strategic sites and promotions and applications. So at WSP, the story's just begun, but I'm really enjoyed my time there so far. And yeah, that's just a quick snapshot of my career to date. And I'm sure if anyone's got any questions, we can take that up at the end. Thank you. Back to you, Helen.
Thank you very, very much. That was quite insightful and also very, very interesting. So we've heard from our two practicing planners, one working in the private sector and the other in the public sector. And we've seen that they both had different routes in terms of their career progression. So now we are going to hear from the experts who deals with recruitment. So there is another way into the profession, which is, you know, actually going through a recruitment consultancy. Our guest speaker is Joshua. I will introduce him in a minute. I just want to speak about some of the things that he's going to be bringing on board. He works with a lot of organizations who are looking for planners, and so he understands the industry. And we would like to really, really appreciate him giving up his time this evening to do this presentation. He's keen to help young planners. That's one of his passions. And he wants to see young planners getting their first career breaks, getting into jobs that they like and they find interesting. And hopefully at the end of his presentation, we will take some Q&A, and then I will then ask Olafiyin, who is the chair of the Commonwealth Young Planners Association, to give us a 5-minute talk, and then we will close. I'm conscious we started 10 minutes late. If you are happy for us to overrun with that 10 minutes, please just type yes into the chat box or say no. I'm hoping that we will still have enough time for question and answer. If we get more no's than more yeses, then we will see how we roll. But we've got quite a lot of questions already. And if you have any other question, please type it into the chat room and I will take them. Thank you very much. Okay, so over to you. Thank you very much for all those who have said yes. Thank you. Over to you. Oh, sorry, I haven't introduced Joshua. Joshua, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
Okay, Mr. Joshua Palmer is an experienced, sorry, I want to put this in front of me so I'm not looking sideways. Because I was, I've got that on another screen. Mr. Joshua Palmer is an experienced recruitment consultant within the property sector, specializing in the placement of town planners, environmental consultants, transport planners, economic consultants, and stakeholder engagement consultants nationwide. Following a number of successful years working for a global recruitment agency based in Manchester, Joshua decided it was time to turn his dreams into reality, and he then set up PropSource Consulting. One thing that Joshua hasn't told us, he hasn't told us what his degree was on. So it might be useful for you to just give us a bit of insight in terms of your background before you then go into your talk. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Can I just double check, is my screen being shared?
It's not in presentation mode. We need you to put it in slideshow. So if you click slideshow, it's already, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, thank you for the introduction, Helen. Yeah, in terms of my background, I went to Liverpool John Moores University and studied civil engineering. So that was sort of my start within, the construction industry. Didn't end up going into the industry after university, and somehow sort of fell into recruitment, working for, as Helen said, a global property recruitment agency in Manchester, and I operated within the town planning sector. And then as of September last year, I decided to set up PropSource Consulting, and here we are today. So we decided to partner with the Bain Planners Network because working in recruitment, you're able to see firsthand the lack of diversity. And it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that's very important. So, if I can make a change, then, I'll offer my sort of assistance. So that sort of takes us into the first slide. So what I'm going to discuss is key skills and traits of a town planning professional. So I'm not going to elaborate on every single point, but I will cover a few. So first of all, analytical. So as a town planning professional, you'll spend a lot of time reviewing policy, analysing and advising clients. Secondly, negotiation. So this is going to be something that's part of your day-to-day, whether you're a planning officer who may be negotiating with a planning consultant or a developer in a pre-application meeting, or if you're a planning consultant, you could be negotiating with your client or a planning officer. So something that you're going to be doing day-to-day. Sociable skills. So sociable in the sense of relationship building, and this can be internally or externally. So this could be with a few of your colleagues and also with other professionals throughout the industry. Are you a broad thinker? So can you think at a strategic level as well as being able to drill down into a specific issue? The best town planners are able to do both. Soft sales and the ability to use persuasive language to your advantage. So this is something that you're going to be doing again day to day, consciously and subconsciously. Strong work ethic, that sort of goes for itself. To progress within the industry, you need to be going that sort of extra mile, and that doesn't always mean working late nights. It can just mean getting a lot more out of your day. Being adaptable, again, something that's very important. Every day is different. Every planning application is different. Whether you're working in the public or private sector, you do need to be adaptable because the world of planning is ever changing. So that takes me on to the next slide, which is about what employers value. So I think, as Judith sort of alluded to in her sort of presentation, in terms of asking questions, it's very important. Make sure you ask questions to your peers. you've got to think that some of the senior staff that you may be working with might have forgotten the knowledge that you lack in the early stages of your career. So just ask, because it's a lot better to ask questions than make a whole heap of mistakes. Also, speak with your colleagues about what projects they're working on or what processes they're involved in, because it shows a keen interest, and it's also something to keep in the forefront of your mind that it's not just your line manager who may be feeding you your work that's analysing you, it's also the people around you. So like Judith sort of said in her presentation, where she walked over to somebody else in a separate sort of division and then had a chat with them. So, it's just important and something to keep in mind. Also, are you self-sufficient, and can you use your initiative? So as a planner in the early stages of your career, whether you're a student or you've got 1 to 2 years of experience, a lot of the work you do may be repetitious. So you've got to ask yourself, can you do more? Can you provide more detail? It's important to be proactive and not reactive. The last point, which is, are you showcasing the right behaviors? So they say as a graduate or somebody in the early stage of their career, 90% of how you're perceived is behavior and 10% is skills and knowledge. So as you progress throughout your career, this balances out slightly to more of a 70-30 split. However, the dominating factor is still behaviors. So going back to the first slide where I displayed a number of key skills and traits, are you able to showcase these key skills and traits through your behaviors on a daily basis? So again, just something to think about. Next slide, which is regards to CVs. So if you have relevant town planning experience, make sure you include the projects or processes that you've been involved in, and make sure you elaborate. I come across CVs day to day, and sometimes I'll speak with students who have relevant experience. However, they're not elaborating in their CV. So in their work experience section where they've got a number of jobs, so let's say, for example, a bar job that they had 4 years ago, they've given the same amount of detail to the bar job to the relevant town planning experience. And I'm not saying to discredit the bar job, because there could be skills that you can use as transferable skills that you can use to your advantage. However, just make sure you elaborate. This also takes me on to the second point, which is, what happens if you don't have the experience? Because there will be a number of people applying for jobs that don't have any town planning experience. So what I would say is make sure you include, a dissertation. Make sure you maybe put on the title of a dissertation and a summary of your findings. If you've got experience abroad in Africa, Asia, or wherever it may be, but you might have came to the UK to do your master's, if you've undertook a dissertation here which is to do with the UK planning system, then that's going to look, that's going to go a long way for somebody who's looking at your CV and deciding whether to bring you forward to an interview. It's going to look good if you've done a dissertation which is something to do with the UK planning system. So I would definitely include it. Also, can you showcase skills using real life examples? Can you show that you've been a team player, or can you show that you've been a leader? But it is key to show those real life examples. So that ties in well with sort of the next point, which is demonstrating a keen interest in the industry. So mention any extracurricular activities that you've been involved in, whether that's sort of blog writing or joining a network or whatever it may be, but make sure you include it, because again, it just shows that sort of keen interest and going that extra mile. Also, the last point, sorry, so I've got using spell check and reading through your CV multiple times. It sounds very simple, but the amount of times that I'll receive a CV where there's grammatical errors or spelling errors, so make sure you use spell check, but make sure you just sense check it and read through it a number of times, because it's definitely important. And also, I've got a number of anonymous CVs that I can share with the network. So if you want to get in touch via Helen or myself direct, I'd be happy to share those with you. You can have a look at the structure and the content, and yeah, I can send them across. So next slide, which is interview tips. So have you done your research before the interview? You should know who you're being interviewed by and the company information, and you should be able to use this to your advantage. So when you're asking questions to the interviewers, they should be targeted because of the research that you've done. Second point, which is probably more applicable to those who are currently in work, do your values align with the company or council that you're interviewing for? So it is important and something to think about. However, I do appreciate that for those who are coming into the industry, you are likely to be less choosy given the climate. So that, yes, that is something that I do appreciate. And the importance of self-education. So I understand that whilst you're going through university, a lot of the work that you'll be doing is theoretical. So you want to be able to showcase to the interviewers that you understand that the real world of planning is different. And you're able to do this by perhaps showing that you've researched applications, or you've watched planning committees online, or maybe you've tuned into a GLA hearing. All of these are accessible online, and it's just, again, going to show a keen interest, and it's going to be well received in an interview scenario. Also, a typical interview question could be, what issues is the town planning industry faced with currently? The operative word being currently. And, this is where you have your chance to talk about current topics such as the white paper or the MPPF or whatever it may be. And you're only going to have this understanding if you're reading industry outlets, or you're speaking to people, or you're doing your own research. Self-education is important, but it's something that you've got to keep throughout your career, because, as I said before, the world of planning is ever changing. A new government can come in, you could have new planning law or legislation, so you've always got to stay sort of 2 steps ahead. Lastly, sounds very cliche, but be yourself. It is very important. Over the years, I've had a number of clients who have said during an interview, they've realized very quickly when somebody's trying too hard to fit the mold of a company. So be yourself and it will go a long way. So now just some general advice. So again, working in the industry for a number of years, you start to cotton on to a number of trends. So, any advice I can give is obviously to try and help out. So public or private sector, there's not a right or wrong route into the industry. They're both as valuable as each other. However, what I've found is a common misconception of the public sector, especially among students. So I speak with students, daily, weekly, and I have done over the last few years. And, when I ask, which route would you like to go down, I tend to get, the private sector to be put in the main, the answer that comes, and which is fine because there's no right or wrong route. However, I'll ask, what's your reasoning behind that? And there is a bit of an empty answer. There isn't really a reason for it, why they're maybe disregarding the public sector. So what I want to say in the matter is that the public sector is, it's a great place to, really sort of delve deep into planning sort of legislation, whether you're working in development management, enforcement, or policy. It can be a great place to be. And from speaking with team leaders from councils up and down the country and directors from reputable consultancies, they say that some of their best planners have both public and private sector experience. So it's just definitely something to think about, because it can make you a very well-rounded planner. Also, something to think about is multiple career paths. So as a town planner, there's so many different areas that you can go into. It's not just strictly town planning or strictly development management. You can go into EIA, so more on the environmental management side, stakeholder engagement, flood risk, highways, heritage, and that's just to name a few. So again, it's just something to be aware of, that there are many different routes that you can go down. So Christopher Kukowski is a name that I did want to mention. So he's one of the lead barristers as part of the White Paper Task Force. So by 2023, they would like to have their reforms in place. Appreciate that's a bit of a tall order, but that's a different conversation. So I know number 10 and number 11 are both behind the changes, and it should result in more money being released to cover the upskilling of planners in councils. So the reason I mention this is, again, kind of going back to sort of staying 2 steps ahead. So if you're a planner coming into the industry, if you've got an understanding of the white paper and similar topics, it's going to be well received in an interview, and it's just going to help you, moving forward. The RTPI, IEMA, RIC, so they're obviously our governing bodies for the profession, RTPI being the Royal Town Planning Institute. So again, reason I mentioned this, and again, Judith did touch on it, but in terms of becoming chartered, it should be something that's, important to you. you should want to be chartered in the profession that you're working in. But with the years of experience that you may have abroad, or if you've gone through university and spent years going through that, it should be something that's very important, and you should let your line manager know, whether you are working in the public sector or the private sector. You've got to let them know that it is important, because it is going to sort of help you out, and it's it's something that's personal to you, and a very proud moment for town planning professionals in the industry. Mentors. So again, you're never too experienced or too old to learn, because the town planning industry is ever changing. It's always good to speak to people. You don't have to be assigned an official mentor, but this is what the network is for. If we help each other out, we can speak with people, and also people that you're working with as well. The last point is what I'd like to call a power question. So it's something that I think you should remind yourself of throughout your career. So what is the purpose of town planning, and what is your purpose? So, why did you get into planning? And I think if you constantly ask yourself this question, it could maybe even shape your career path and the routes that you decide to go down. You might decide, oh, actually, I'd like to work for a particular council that's very much pro-development, or I'd like to go into a consultancy that's got a heritage bias or an infrastructure bias, or I might want to work for a particular developer that has a very, bespoke, that produces bespoke developments and has a strong focus on urban design and the design of the building. So, just have that kind of repeated in your head. So now this brings me on to the last slide. How can we help each other? So attending events like today, Helen and the BAME Planners Network are brilliant at organising events, and monthly there's different topics and guest speakers. So that can definitely help. Also sharing knowledge throughout the network, that's definitely very important, and asking questions amongst each other. And how can sort of PropSource Consulting help? So, as I've said, and also Helen, I'm happy to offer my sort of helping hand, whether that be helping with sort of CVs or interviews, or also bringing opportunities to the network's attention. As part of the network, I'm happy to help. And it's worth noting that at the moment, I'm working very closely with a number of consultancies across the UK, discussing the strategies with sort of HR teams and also sort of directors of sort of planning to help with diversity issues. So it's in the early stages, but if, when we get to having a conclusive strategy, I'll be able to bring that to the network and share it with you guys. Lastly, I know I've talked for quite a long time, but just want to give sort of a market overview just very briefly. And if you do want a bit more detail, then you can get in touch directly, and I'd be happy to provide you with an overview. But one thing that I definitely sort of want to mention for students who are coming into the industry, there are councils up and down the country that are definitely under-resourced. So to put it into perspective, over the last 7 months, where I've probably spoke to close to 30 to 40 planners who have been made redundant. None of them have been within the public sector. They've all been private sector individuals. So just something to think about when you're applying, or you're sending emails out to, looking for a work experience or a new role. So definitely, just consider, different councils. Also, if you're struggling to get into the industry, you could maybe look at other areas that are linked to town planning. If you can't get, a development management role within a council, or you can't get a planning consultant role, you might want to look at, heritage or EIA or infrastructure. Last point would be to look out for small independent consultancies. So if you're going to go into the private sector, so obviously you've got some of your larger firms, your Savills, your CBREs, your Cushman and Wakefields, your Avis and Youngs, who have graduate schemes. However, they are very competitive. So I'd definitely say apply, but look at the smaller firms where it might take a bit more research to find out who they are. But if you give them a call, you're more likely to speak to a decision maker, or if you don't speak to the right person, they'll be able to point you in the right direction very easily. And also, when you go into some of these small planning consultancies, you can get a lot of, really good exposure because you're not in a large team. So again, just something to consider. But that's my presentation. So thank you for listening. And I think, like Helen and the team said, that there'll be questions to follow after.
Thank you very, very much. That was quite awesome. I'm sure that we've all learned a lot. Even though I've been in the profession for over 3 decades, you always learn something new. I'd just like to come back on a couple of things before I move on to the Q&A. Because it's not a very big group, I'll probably see whether, if you've put forward a question when you filled the form, then we can, I would want to give you that opportunity. So I can see a few of you who are here, so I will just pick up those particular points and I'll post it onto the chat. And then after that, if we still have time, those who are not here, I can still take their own questions, or if those who are here have a burning question arising from the presentation, please let me know. I think that the first thing I'd like to say is that we've learned a lot from all the presentation, the various career paths, the fact that, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. When Pan spoke, as well as Judith, and we also heard from Joshua, self-education was key, being able to just put yourself out there and and learning from others, having a flexible attitude, and of course, learning from your peers. That was quite important. The bit I wanted to add was with regards to value. When Joshua spoke about value, he spoke about it from the perspective of your value. If it aligns with the value of the organization, that's key. That's very, very important. However, what I want to add is that most organizations, they want to know how you align with their values. So when you attend an interview with local authorities especially, they're going to be asking you if you're aware of their values. So it's important to read up on their values and try and think about how your own work ethics align with their values. So that's what I wanted to bring in. That it's quite, key. So don't go to an interview and not read up about the values of the organizations that you are going into, because a question is likely to come up. All right. I'm going to, I did say that I will post questions from the list. I'm just going to look at the chat box and see if anyone has posted any. If not, I will begin to post. The time now is 19:43. I would give 5 minutes before 8 to some presentation, a few talk from Olafiyin. And then one of the things I wanted to say before I forget is, we also have a mentoring scheme. We've got people who have actually offered to mentor. The chief executive of the RTPI, she's willing to mentor at least 3 people. We have a chief planner who is also agreed to mentor. There is someone in the private, I think it was 2 months ago, she did offer to take on some work experience people. So if you're interested in work experience, email info@bameplanners.com and just say that you're interested in work experience, how much time you have, and I'll try and pass your information on. If you're interested in mentoring, I'm sure that, some of you might have filled your membership survey and pointed that out. However, just to offer the people that came to this conference the first opportunity or this first training. So just, email and say that you were at this function and you are interested in mentoring, and then we will try and match you up or give you some, or ask you to provide more information. I can't go into too much details because of time. Okay, so Zoom is here. I'm so sorry. So I can never pronounce. I'm so sorry. Maybe you need to teach me again. Is it some or so? Some. Okay. So yeah. This is Som's question. So do you want to read it out? I've posted it there for you. This is the question you put in the.
Oh yeah. So I've asked a question about how to secure a role during the market downturn, because basically now we're experiencing this pandemic. So I think it could be a bit more difficult because some of the company, they have actually like furloughed some of the staff previously, and also like maybe thinking about like to lay off some staff. So it's slightly more difficult this year, I would have imagined.
Okay. So I think I would put that question to Joshua. Hi, Joshua, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah.
So how to secure a role during market downturn? I think you answered it in part, but maybe if you want to just elaborate a bit.
Yeah, there's definitely no hiding that it's difficult. You know, it's very competitive at the moment. I know there are still graduate schemes running, but I think, like I said in my presentation, they are quite limited in terms of the roles. So I think, you know, a key tip would be to broaden, definitely to broaden sort of your horizons in terms of maybe what you're looking for. So I don't know if you're looking for like a specific type of consultancy or a council. So I'd say that's something that you may have to do, and it might not be ideal, but I think it's just very important getting your foot in the door. Obviously, it's amazing if you can join, you know, a council or a consultancy or a developer that is your dream job. However, given the times that we're in, that may be quite difficult. And that's not to deter you away from your dreams or tell you to not apply for these sort of roles. But I think it's just important to get in the industry first, and then you can sort of navigate through. Also, look, and I know it's not ideal for everybody, but, you know, relocating, depending on where you live, you know, it's no secret that there's, you know, might be more jobs in London or in Manchester, in Birmingham, in some of the bigger cities across the country. Again, there'll be roles sort of elsewhere, but, you know, just maybe something to consider as well. That's probably what I would sort of say, really, because there's no sort of magic way. It is just a difficult time at the moment, and I think some of the stuff that we discussed today in terms of, you know, preparing for your interviews properly and, you know, making sure your CV is good to actually get yourself an interview, that will help. And like I said, I'm happy to help, and I'm sure other people throughout the network are happy to share sort of knowledge. So I think that's what it's going to come down to as well, to help put your best foot forward.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay, I'm going to paste this. This is from Buki. I think we've got Buki. Buki, I think that's your question. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to read it out? It saves, you know, at least it gets everyone to be involved. It's not a very big group. I'm just going to look at who else is here so I see what questions. If you don't mind unmuting. Have you seen where you need to unmute? Okay, have you unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, so I've pasted your question.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My question is, what is your advice to people, especially the members of this group, coming from other parts of the world looking to continue practicing town planning in the UK?
Well, I think most of that have been answered. Would we say that? Because it's about the experience, gaining work experience. I think one of the key things, if, you know, when Pan spoke, Pan had worked in Hong Kong previously. And so it would also be the same as those who are just studying, is trying to gain as much work experience, being able to reach out to organizations. And I know that you've already done a bit of that, but not to give up, to keep looking and just being able to gain, because the first thing is getting your first job. Once you get your first job, your first experience, then you can then show that you've worked in the UK. And I think one thing that Josh also mentioned was about adding things that you've done. So if you've got examples of work you've done previously while in other parts of the country or the world, that also can aid. I don't know whether any of the other panel speakers, and Olafiyin, please do contribute, and anyone else, if you feel that you've got something to add to any of the questions, just raise your hands.
Helen, I would just
Yeah, okay.
I'll just add to that question. Just to add to that answer, I think that you're right, just saying that showcasing previous work that you've done. I remember my first graduate role, I've done some planning, work experience here and there, but I remember what really stood out on my CV when I kept going to the interviews is the fact that I studied abroad for a year. They were really interested in that, and it had nothing. Well, I did have something to do with planning, but they're more interested in the experience. How did I find living abroad? What did I get up to? What activities did I partake in? And another one they were really interested in, I spent 3 months in Zambia with a charity. And that was something that was particularly interesting. It wasn't necessarily planning related, but it just showed a different side to my, I guess, maybe my personality. And in my interview, when I went for the house builder role, I don't remember her asking me anything in my interview that was related to planning. I'd learned everything, about the MPPF, and I really swatted up, but she was just talking to me as a, normal person, like, what are your interests, your family? And I think at the graduate role, they're not expecting you to have all the experience in the world. They know you don't, but they want to be able to see that, can you hold a conversation with people? Are you comfortable in the environment? Are you confident in yourself? Not saying that you have to be Mr. or Mrs. I know everything, but do you have just a general sense of confidence? Are you able to speak to people easily? What other activities do you do? Do you write a blog outside of work? What's your blog about? Just being yourself, I think, is also important.
Okay, thank you very much for that. There is a question from Morgan. Morgan, if you don't mind reading it out.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry.
No, we can't hear you clearly.
Oh, that's so bad. What about now? I'm trying to be louder a bit. Can you hear
It's
me
still
now?
a bit faint. I can read it out for you, or can everybody hear him?
No, maybe I'll try it without the earphone. Is it better?
Yes, it's slightly better. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So can I ask Josh? Is about the interview, because I have been doing 3 interviews at the moment, and because I think the pen sharing is quite useful, because he mentioned he's showing portfolio during the interviews that maybe bring some inspiration to the interviewers. So now all the interviews are moving online. Do you see some different criteria? For example, should I still bring something like evidence during the interviews? Even though it's online, do you think that work, or do you have any other suggestion to performance for the online interviews?
Yeah, you could do in terms of did you mean sort of print out projects that you've worked on, or information about what you've been involved in? Yeah, because what you could do, if you know who you've been interviewed by and you've got their email addresses, you could even send it prior to the interview, or if it's like a Zoom or Microsoft Teams, you could have a presentation that you could share. I think anything like that will, could look good, just because it's something a bit different. It shows you being a bit creative, and you've obviously got a keen interest, you're thinking about it. And I think that's what they definitely want to see. A lot of the online interviews that I've sort of helped individuals prepare for, I've been within the private sector, because that's where a lot of my work lies. So a lot of the interviews have been quite conversational and informal. So they have just been a chat, and there hasn't been too much in terms of the presentation. I think, like Judith said, you could swat up, which I'll always tell people to do. An individual who just wants to have a chat with you. So each interview is different, so it's quite kind of difficult. But to answer your question, I would say, you can still send across sort of information. I think it will look good.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. I've got a question from Jake. Jake, I will take that after Olafiyin has spoken, but I did say I was going to ask her to speak just before 8. Then I've got a question from Bianca. I'm looking at the questions I already have here. I think those are the only people I've got question from on the list. So if you are here and you haven't written down the question when you signed on, then just, send me your question privately, then I can read it if we have time. So I know that we have a question on online interview from Alina. I will come back to that. Okay, so I will take the 2 questions in my list, then take Alina and any other. But for now, I want us to hear from Olafiyin Taiwo. She's the current chair of the Commonwealth Town Planning Institute. Well, maybe, okay, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah.
And just
That's fine.
say, what you do for young planners and how the young planners on this platform can key into that organization as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Helen, and hello, everyone. It's been a great evening, and a very big thank you to all the speakers as well. It's been very insightful listening to their planning journeys and also listening to Joshua really and his advice on planning, on getting a job in planning. I think they've been very good ones. And I've been able to pick some points as well from it that one can easily give as advice to other people and to keep in pocket for when it's needful. The CAP Young Planners, so that's a Commonwealth Association of Planners, Young Planners Network. It's a network of young planners of the registered planning institutes of CAP. So CAP CAP has 27 members. RTPI is a member as well, and over 45,000 members, which includes planners like us as well. And for young planners, for the Young Planners Network, we're really focusing on improving the capacity of young planners, and particularly given the digital revolution that has taken place, we need to be very conscious that the young planners' skills has to be relevant to future roles and also has to be relevant now as well. And so we have been planning different programs towards improving the capacity and skills of young planners. We recently launched our planning mentoring program that has closed now, and we are in the process of matching our mentees, potential mentees, with mentors. But one of the ways that our planners on the call today can really get involved is if you follow us on our social media platforms, you would know when we are organizing programs and events. We have some other events coming up about understanding the role of planning in different countries. And a good thing about the digital age that we are in now is that your planning knowledge is relatively relevant in another country. And your skills are transferable, your knowledge are transferable. You just need to understand the different approaches and techniques to transferring planning knowledge, which usually for the policy transfer aspect and making sure that it's appropriate. There are a lot of opportunities, I would say that, for young planners beyond the typical private and public sector, beyond the local authorities. There are a lot of, there are large third sector organizations that are now involved in urbanization and that relates to planning, such as even the World Vision, it's an example. The Save the Children UK is an example. Adam Smith Institute, international rather, pardon me. They also work with young with urban development issues and with planners. So there are other opportunities, and it's very good for planners for us not to limit ourselves to the sectors that we know. They always recruit as well. They have opportunities, and your skills either in public sector or private sector are also relevant to these organizations. And one of the things that we'll be doing next year is bringing these organizations on board and also letting them share their opportunities so that young planners can be aware and also familiarize themselves with opportunities that are available in other sectors. So this digital age that we are going into, just to round up, is not that planners are not going to lose their jobs. Planners are going to be more relevant. Your knowledge, your skills will be more relevant, and the other areas that isn't really important to planning as well, that the robot or the mechanism can take care of that, will be taken care of, and we will be able to focus on planning as it is. So it's a good time. It's a great time for planners and for young planners in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for that upbeat talk. And please do follow the CAP Young Planners Network. It's international, and there are people from Hong Kong, Nigeria, Australia, Canada. So all the organizations are the Planning Institute of member countries. So the member country must be one of the Commonwealth countries. So it gives you a focus, it gives you a platform. Please do get engaged. One of the things that we're talking about in the BAME Planners Network is visibility. If you are not visible, no one will know what skills you've got. So be visible, participate, and learn. I'm going to quickly throw in the question asked by Jake. Hi, Jake. Jake, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, Jake. Hi. Do you want to read out your question?
Yeah, so I guess Josh touched on this previously about the underrepresentation. I essentially, I just wanted to ask whether, I guess this is to the floor really, whether you guys think that the underrepresentation or lack of diversity of BAME personnel within the industry, essentially how you guys feel that affects minority communities essentially, and essentially, do you feel like the lack of representation is a disservice to these communities?
Okay, I think as a body, we did respond to the government white paper, and we did put that lack of diversity within the profession does have an impact on the BAME communities, because when you are not represented at the policy making stage, when you are not represented at the decision making stage, then you are likely to be disadvantaged. And so again, the lack of visibility of BAME planners also affects the ability of the industry to bring in BAMEs. Town planning as a profession has always been seen as one of those middle class, white-dominated profession. When I joined, you find people who have gone to Oxford, Cambridge, they're the ones entering planning, so they are because it was seen to be a social movement, so I want to be a planner, I'm doing good for the society. And so you find out that there's quite a lot of white middle class male. When I joined planning in 30 years ago, I was often the only Black, the only woman. The industry has grown. Now I enter some councils and there are lots of women. When I joined planning, you could count. I studied planning, we were only 4 ladies on the planning program. 4, it was male dominated. That was what it was. It was seen as technical. So definitely the answer to your question is yes. And that is why we exist as a network. We are trying to break down the barriers. We are trying to reach out to the BME, and try to influence. Just before I, move on to the next item, last week Thursday, I was opportuned to present to the Parliamentary Scrutiny Committee on the future of planning. And these were some of the points I made to that scrutiny panel. I went there not to just speak about being a planner, I also spoke on behalf of the BAME communities and in terms of how plan policies affects us. Yeah. So thanks very much. I see that you are a student. Are you a planning student?
Yeah, so I'm currently a 3rd year architecture and urban planning student at UE.
Okay. Okay. And how are you finding it?
It's okay. Yeah, going steady.
All right. Okay. So that's good. So thanks for asking that. And and just watch, in terms of what we write, just if you follow us, then just see what we are doing to just break down those barriers, it does affect drastically in terms of culture. You know, if you look at the way planning is done only from one particular angle. And so almost everywhere in the world is looking the same. And so culture has been taken out of it and some other things. All right, I'll move on quickly. This is Bianca's question. Then I will come and read out the ones that are within. Please, if you want to contribute, just raise your hand. Mindful, raise your, not your main hand, but you can use the reactions. So this is Bianca's question. Hi, Bianca. Bianca, I think she was online. I thought she was online, or maybe she's gone. Okay, maybe she's gone because we've gone down. Okay, so Bianca has gone, but I'll still read it out loud. What were the main challenges and barriers you faced as international graduates in the UK? Do you think there is a need for bespoke and tailored career support for the international students community? Pan, let me put that to you because you were an international student. Go on.
Yes, I think the main challenges are a language, because English is not my first language, and obviously that is something quite crucial if you want to communicate with either your client, your employer, whoever. So language is always a problem. So and also about the challenges, another challenge maybe is to how to demonstrate to the employer that our experience before in other parts of the world is relevant to the UK or to the job that I'm going for. So I guess that's the main challenges that I can think of. Whether there's a need for tailored career support for the international student community, I don't know how to answer that question. Perhaps that's something that university should be looking how they can deal with that. So maybe, but I mean, the BEAMS Planner Network will be able to help as well, because I'm sure we've got people from different part of the world coming to the UK to work as well. So maybe we can fill that gap as well. So I guess that's what I can think about.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very good answer and quite comprehensive. And hopefully Bianca would get to watch the video and she can get the response she's looking for. There is a question we already have there from Usman. Usman, do you want to read your question? Is Usman still here? Usman, and then we will take the one for Alina, and then I think that's it, because we've answered the one. So Alina has got two questions, one on online and then the other for the interview. So I'll take Usman's first, and then I'll take Alina, and then we will just draw to a close. I know that we've got some people on the platform that haven't spoken. I'm conscious that there is someone I knew from when I went to do some work in Nigeria, Mr. Peter Guom. I think he's a lecturer and he's doing his doctorate. He's joined today's platform. He's not a young planner, don't be fooled, but he's, yeah, really, you know, I think maybe just wants to learn from the young people. Hi, Peter. Hi, Peter. Well, maybe he's trying to unmute. After the next question, then maybe you can speak because you are trying to unmute, but yeah, I'm trying to save time. It's almost 8:10. I'm so sorry. Okay, so quickly, Usman, and then Alina, and then let's see if we can get this finished quickly and wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, just advice on how to maneuver within the planning industry. So I had my first role as a monitoring and evaluation officer. So I'm really wondering on how to maneuver to different departments like development management or planning policy when it's a limited skill set sometimes in certain roles.
Okay, if I may ask, which, you know, where are you working at the moment?
Well, I left my current job. It was in Barking in Dagenham.
Okay, and you've left the authority?
Yeah.
So at the moment, you are not in work?
No, I've moved back to the north.
Okay, all right. So one of the ways, again, is trying to get a graduate traineeship. if you were still working within the local authorities, some local authorities, they grow their own planners. So even if you are working in non-planning roles, they would give you the opportunity to move into planning. You know, Arrow Council did it, even where I am at the moment, they do it. And at times it's even getting into a technical role. So if you can get a technical role and then just try and move sideways, show the fact that you are prepared to learn, and there is always an opportunity. So, you know, so it's much easier when you are just starting out to move in the industry. But the higher you go, if you're trying to move in the industry, people tend to want current experience, and that then becomes a challenge. So the quicker you're able to change your roles when you're just starting out, the better, because of experience. People want experience, they want current experience, and you keep hearing that. But don't give up. As Josh mentioned earlier, if you need any help with your CV, then do give us a call. We can see what we can do to help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Alina, this is the last question from you, and then we would have to call it a day. Alina, over to you.
Hi, so I've applied to a lot of large firms, planning firms, and they're a bit more impersonal at this time because everything is online. So Josh was talking about you should be reaching out, or it's helpful to reach out to interviewers, to do background checks and stuff like that. What should I be doing? Should I be contacting the graduate scheme, or should I just kind of let it flow?
Yeah, I would say if you've got a HR contact or you've got somebody's email address, I'd definitely ask who you're being interviewed by. I don't think it looks too keen, or I think it's a good thing, and it'll just help you be able to ask targeted questions, because you might do some research on their LinkedIn, and you might be or their company website, and you can see what their specialisms are. So yeah, I think it's important to do so if you can get that information. I'd advise to.
Okay, I was going to say that also use the network. If you're on the WhatsApp group, are you a member of the network? Okay, so you might want to think about joining. And when you jump straight into the WhatsApp chat. And if you're going for an interview, just ask if anyone works in that organization, and someone would, answer you. And if you want someone to just help you with your interviewing, what are they likely to ask? We have people on the platform who are directors, who are DM managers, people who sit on those interviews. And so someone will be willing to just help you. It's our aim to see everyone here this evening in work, at least within the next 3 to 6 months. Otherwise, why are we doing all of this? So, but most important thing is use the network. Use the network. That's why this was started. It was just to help people, help each other. You can even connect with people that you've seen here this evening. You can just text each other and take each other's number and give each other support. Is quite important. But if you need any information, either email or send a text in the WhatsApp group. We will try and help. It's a busy, busy world planning. So at times you have to bear with us, but we will do, but everyone does try to help. Okay. Thank you very much. Peter, I don't know if he's now left. If not, hi, Peter. Do you want to say something quickly before we go? Okay, he sent us a text. Happy to be with us. Peter is based in Edinburgh. Hi, Peter. I can see that you are trying to unmute. Are you going to speak or not? Okay. Maybe Peter is not. Yes, all the materials would be made available. And we are going to, if anyone, because I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that it's being recorded. If anyone might, if you object to having the video on YouTube, just let us know. We won't put it there. Or we could share it on YouTube or privately only to this group so that any of you can then view it. But what we tend to do is to use it to encourage other people. So please do let us know. Email, I should have said this at the beginning, that it's being recorded, but we won't share it without making sure, because everybody has shown their face and you've asked questions. But you all look lovely. You
Helen,
well.
sorry, just to cut in a bit. I can see someone raising their hand, Vinita Sharma. She's raising her hand.
Oh, okay, thank you. I can't see this. I can't see that. Hi, Vinita. Hi, Vinita.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me here. And this network, I think it's really reassuring, because I have a little different profile from other people, because my main experience was back in India. So I worked there for more than 10 years, and then I moved to London, and now I'm here somewhere. I cannot call myself as a new graduate. I cannot call myself as a new planner, but I am unable to get any opportunity where I can say that, use my experience and I can do better for you. So basically, I've started my career here from a bottom scratch, starting from a planning technician. So it was a bit hard for me to kind of start all over again. And honestly, even now I have not been able to find a, a role which kind of satisfies me intellectually, and I enjoy working, and I feel that I'm getting that comprehensive role where I'm able to use my previous experience. So I really don't know where I stand. Should I be going for a new degree here? Though I am an associate planner, associate member of RTPI, but it's really difficult for me to understand, like, how should I approach the market, and how should I find a role where I feel satisfied and I feel that yes, I am working well, I'm getting a good role, and I'm getting getting to work on strategic plans, because that's what I was doing back in India. I was doing big scales greenfield development strategic plans, master plans. So I just wondering, like, how can I go about it? And definitely this group seems to be really kind of the thing that I was looking for, because everyone is so supportive and so open to help out and listen out. Because the first thing is, there's no I don't know to whom to go and talk about it. I don't really have a network here. I'm very new in that way.
Anyway, thank you. And that is why we are here, to support someone like you. You are not alone. There's another lady on the platform. She's also got 10 years experience working in Nigeria. And that's Bukola. She's the lady with the glasses. And she also is trying to get into the planning profession. What I would like to say is that because of time, it may be that we have a conversation outside of here. And again, it's about looking for opportunities. It's coming to the UK. Even I studied in the UK. I worked up to the head of strategic planning. I left the country just for a couple of years. When I came back, it wasn't easy getting back into planning. I only left the country for 3 years, because everything is about current experience. And this is something that we are trying to break down, trying to tell people it shouldn't be about current experience. What I like to say, Vineta and Buki, is I'm speaking to some directors already saying, look, it shouldn't be about experience. It should be not about currency. It should be about experience that you've gained and transferable skills. And so what I like to say is that email me. I would have to try and see how we can get something set up. I want to also work with women in planning on this particular issue. I've raised it with the director of Westminster when we spoke last week. I've told the lady this tends to happen more to women, because women are carers. They are the ones who often have to leave their homes to go with their husbands. They are the ones who take time out to have babies. And so this is an issue that I want to address with women in planning. I'm also a board member. No, I'm also an advisory board member for women in planning. So we have a meeting this week, and I'm going to see what they can do. So if we tackle it from both race and sex or gender, hopefully we can try and see what we can do. Okay, so do keep in touch. I have a very busy week this week, but do keep in touch. Myself, Olafiyin, Pan, and Judith, we're in the steering group, so we would find a way to look at how we can help you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
And of course, do email Josh, send your CV through. It can help you start to look at opportunities. Yeah, I will encourage you guys, try and make use of Josh recruitment firm. Hopefully they can also help you with your job search. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Gom says he's having problem. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We did overrun. Thank you for waiting. And hopefully we would organize another session for the BAME Young Planners. I don't know when, but I'll speak to Judith. I should have explained. I'm sorry. I should have introduced that properly. Judith will be the lead from the steering group in terms of the young planners. So if you have any questions, any queries, you can still email it to info@BAME-planners, just mark it for attention and she will get it. Okay, so she will come up with programs. If there is anything that you want us to look at, lies with future topics, future ideas, I would like you to have the last word. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to say in particular.
I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to Pan and Josh for taking the time out to prepare the presentation. Thank you, Helen, for chairing this meeting for us this evening. And yeah, like Helen said, if you just contact me on LinkedIn or email info@bameplanners.com. Anything that you'd like to see over 2021, we're starting to plan activities now. So if there's anything in particular, please get in touch. Obviously, we're here to serve you. So it'd be really good if we know what you would like and then we can look to put that on. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.